Hello folks, thanks for joining another episode of Sam's Device Advice. Today we're going to be looking at one of the most popular assistive technologies available out there, and it's one of the most used across Ontario, I'm finding, and that is Read&Write for Chrome. Now you might have heard of this as just Read&Write or Google Read&Write. This is actually made by a company called TextHelp, and it's a third-party company aside from Google, and they provide this software that works really well with Google's infrastructure. Now what's kind of nice is that I'll show you as well that you can use this as a Windows app also. So it's not just for Google Chrome. If you are a Windows person, if you use Microsoft Office, you can still actually use Read&Write, and it's really effective. So what we're going to look at today is how to install the Read&Write for Chrome extension. We're going to look at the dictate features, the text-to-speech. I'm going to show you some of the cool study tools you can use for this, as well as training activity I've developed for workshops and for students as well. So let's go ahead and take a peek at my desktop. So I'm going to first show you how to install this on a blank account. So this is an account that does not currently have Read&Write. Now as a note, if you're using your school board account, you likely already have this installed. So you'll know that when you open up Google Chrome, when you go up to the top right and make sure you are signed into your school board account, you can see this is just a personal Gmail one I'm using. But if you're logged into your school board's account, you should have Read&Write pop up as an extension up here. But if you don't, or if you want this on your personal account, let's walk through how to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is on a Google search, I'm just going to go to the Chrome Web Store. There's a number of different ways to do this, but I'm just going to show you the way I go about it. The Chrome Web Store is kind of Google's version of the App Store from Apple. And it's all apps and themes that you can use for your Google Chrome browser. So what I'm going to do is search for Read&Write, and I'm going to use an ampersand. It seems to find it a little easier. And it should be our first extension here. So Read&Write for Google Chrome, says offered by TextHelp. They do have quite a few other apps that work with this, and we're really going to focus on just the Read&Write toolbar for now. So I'm going to go ahead and click Add to Chrome. It's going to pop up a little notification saying what they're going to have access to. And so I'm going to click Add Extension. And same as always, if you are installing something onto your Google Drive or Google Chrome, you're probably going to have to log in a couple times, but you should only have to do it once. All right, so it's saying that my Read&Write toolbar is installed, ready to go. That's all I really had to do. So now, let's say I am on, let's go to a Wikipedia page. Googling Wikipedia here, like a Muppet. All right, so I'm going to click on my toolbar, and it's going to pop up for me. So you can see that I'm currently using the free version. So this is not the paid version of it. There are free offers for teachers that if you log in with a teacher account, even for a school board that doesn't have Read&Write purchased, you can still get it for free. Students not so much, but there is a web page if you Google it that Read&Write will give it to you for free. So by opening it up, it has brought up this login window. So like I said, you're going to have to sign in the first time you try to use Read&Write. Now my screen resolution is gigantic here, so I'm going to have to resize this. But at the bottom, I'm going to do this on my other screen, sorry. But at the bottom it'll see Allow, so I'm going to click Allow, and it's going to install it for me. So that's the easy part of actually installing it. Now I'm going to switch over to my other account that already has this installed, and I have the paid version, not just my trial. So let's get rid of that one. So here I am in a Google Doc. So Read&Write will technically work on 99% of websites out there, but it works best in Google Doc. This is kind of its bread and butter. When you open up Google Docs, you might see this tab here. So it's popping down just below my bookmarks bar. If you don't see that, you can click on the puzzle piece up here in your extensions. So again, this is your extensions list. If I'm clicking on the end of my URL, I can shrink these away. Nice little tip for you. But yeah, so your extension list, once you're logged in, so again, this is my professional account here I'm using, it will bring all of your extensions that you have installed. So I can click on my Read&Write puzzle piece, and you'll see that that tab kind of appears or disappears. So in a Google Doc, if I click on this tab, it's going to extend that toolbar, so now I have full access to it. And again, if it's taking up too much space, you can press up on this arrow and it'll hide it again. They've made an update recently, which is really nice. It used to drop this toolbar and it would go over top of your title and over top of some of your menus. but they've actually had it kind of pop out over top of it, so you're not missing anything. It just takes up a bit more of your page. So these are your toolbar features available on this. There are a couple more that if you go into the settings, your settings are found under this 3 dots, more, and then under options. This is where you can actually control some of the features. So the first one is the speech. So when you're using text-to-speech, you can change the vocalizer. So you can have different accents, you can have different languages altogether, male or female voice. One of my favorite things to do with students right off the bat is I have them play around with different voices. Some of it's just getting used to the features, but they also see if they prefer to listen to the UK voice. If they're more likely to use it, I say feel free. You can also change the speed at which it reads, and then you can change whether it's continuous reading or if it'll only read one sentence at a time. Their translation, it's okay. I don't tend to use it. I tend to use Google Translate on its own. But this will quickly translate 1 or 2 words at a time for you. So underneath, if you go around, you can see these different features that are available. You can kind of poke through. But if I click on the Features tab, you can see all of these are turned on except for web search. Really all web search will do is if I click on a word and then click on the web search button on my toolbar, it will do a Google search for that word. Meh. I tend to turn that off. I don't really use it. But otherwise, you can turn these features off and on. And this is a quick note that if you're providing your students with a test and you have students using Read and Write and you don't want them using, let's say, the spell check, or you don't want them using the dictionary, this is a good time to go into their, just over their shoulder even, while they're logged in, go into this and turn off these features. It does take some monitoring on your side, but you'd be able to walk past and see which features I have up there. So real quick, let's go through these options on the toolbar, and I'll show you quickly what they do. And then I'm using a worksheet that I've created for students that you can find a link to in the description of this video. And I'll show you how I've used these tools in this activity and go from there. So the first one we see on our toolbar is a new feature from Text Help called Check It. And it's really just their own grammar and spell checker. So you can see now that I've clicked on it and turned it on, any words that are underlined in purple are being pulled out by this company saying there might be some issues with this word. So you want to check it out. So that's just a spell and grammar check. I find it works pretty well, similar to Grammarly if you know that one, but I like that. And I like that you can turn it off and on as well. This button is the word prediction. So if I go to a blank area and I want to start typing, if I start typing the word tomorrow, it's going to then give me these options. So this is similar to word queue. That scared me a little bit. If I highlight my mouse over any of these words,
tomatoes,
it's going to
tomato.
It's going to read that out for me. So this is really good for students who can't necessarily use the dictation feature if they have any vocal issues, whatever it might be. The prediction works pretty well for them to help with spelling. So prediction, I'm a pretty big fan of, but it's not used all that much. Our next 2 features are dictionaries. So the first one is just a word dictionary, obviously. So if I click on a word and then click on my dictionary button, it's going to bring up a definition of that. These little buttons on the side, I can actually click.
A special disposition as if from a...
So it will read out the definition for me. And obviously gives you quite a few definitions there. The next one is a picture dictionary. So it's going to give me a visual for that word. So again, I can click the word to have it read to me.
Call.
And then I can see the different definitions visualized. Then we get into the readback function or the text-to-speech. So you have play, pause, and stop. So if I click play,
just call them ginormous.
It will start reading wherever my mouse was clicked. Then I can pause and stop as I go through. The next option here is Screenshot Reader. Now this, you don't really need this for a Google Doc, let's say, but this is really handy if you have text on your page that you can't highlight. So if it's, let's say it's an infographic you're looking at or any sort of image that has words in it, you would use the Screenshot Reader to have that read to you. So let's quickly, I should have brought up an example of that, but let's look up an infographic really quick and I'll show you how this would work. So let's do this one. This seems fitting. 6 principles of connected learning. This is a very exciting part of the video, watching me look for. Here we go. Okay, so as you can see, I can't click and highlight these words. These are not, this is not set up as text. This is set up as an image. So what I could do is I could open up my Read and Write toolbar, and you can see now this is a floating toolbar I can use on any other website. And then I'll click on my screenshot reader, and it turns my mouse cursor into this T. And all I have to do is drag a box over the words I want it to scan, and it's going to try to scan it and read it to me. Let's see how long this one takes. Starting to wish I could edit these videos, but I do them live. So, yeah, sometimes it's
6 principles of connected learning.
There we go. Sometimes it's quicker than others. Some websites it seems to be a little bit more responsive on, but it's a really nice backup feature. If you don't have text ready to be highlighted and read, you can always use the screenshot reader elsewhere. So that's that. The next toolbar option we have is Audio Maker. What this will do is if I were to highlight a whole paragraph or a whole page, whatever I would like to select, and click this, this is going to turn, or it's going to create an MP3 file of the Read and Write voice reading this back to me. So I present this to students as a way to create their own audiobook. Let's say they have a short story that they have to read and they want to listen to it on the bus ride home. If they want to have just their notes read back to them. Or in unique ways. So I dabbled in stand-up, very poorly I might add, and I wrote all of my bits in Google Docs, and then I created an MP3 of all of my jokes and had it read back to me while I would drive home, so I could try to remember it a little bit better. It was really depressing because it turned out that Google's automated voice has better delivery than I do. So you can take this MP3 and you could load it onto your phone, you could drop it onto an iPad, you could put it on a Chromebook. But essentially it's a way to take the audio from any text you have and bring it with you. So I can open this up and it's going to open up in, I think, my Groove audio from Microsoft. But you can use any media player to play an MP3 now. Our next one is the screen mask. So the screen mask will just follow your mouse and will mask out parts of the screen. Nothing hurts my tech heart a little more than people dragging their dirty fingers across monitors, but a lot of students will do this to help them track on page. So what they can do is they can use this screen mask to just keep track of where they are, and then in the settings you can change the opacity of it, you can change the size, yeah, so you have a lot of different options there. And then to turn it off, all I have to do is click on either this screen mask or this screen mask here. And this little arrow, you can see I can move this box around if it's in my way. Next we have our dictation feature. So we looked at this one in the Google Docs video. All this is turning on Google's voice typing. So if you don't have the Read and Write toolbar, you can find that under the tools and then voice typing. But students will tend to just use this button, and you'll see when I click on it, it will open up this microphone and it's going to start dictating what I'm saying. Works pretty well, and the only thing that you run into is with punctuation and capitalization. It decides to randomly capitalize phrases or words if it thinks you're talking about a song. They're getting better with this, and they're trying to sort out that issue, but you can come along that now and then. Also, if you start dictating in the middle of a sentence, it will capitalize the start of that as well. Next, we have that translation. So again, if I click on a word, click this translator, whatever language I had set as my translation in my options, it will translate that one word for me. It's okay, but you probably won't be using that a whole lot. Next, we're getting into our study tools. So our study tools are helpful on Google Docs, really helpful on other pages, and I'll show you what I mean. So the highlighters are just highlighters. So all it's doing is using Google's highlighters. Instead of clicking on this highlight color button here, I would go up and click on my yellow highlighter, and now I have this sentence done. If I wanted to change different colors for different sections, I could do that. And you'll see this brush, what this does is clear highlights. So let's say on my keyboard, I'm going to press Control and A and select everything, and I'm going to click on this, and it's going to clear all of my highlights. I'll Control Z to undo that. You can also highlight a certain part that's highlighted, and then click your clear highlights and it'll get rid of it. I'm going to go ahead and clear all of mine right now. So then you have these two buttons, which I'm going to show you on another page, and these are going to help you create other documents using your highlights. So let's go to, once again, the world's greatest hockey team's Wikipedia page, and I'm going to show you how this would work. And actually, really quickly, while we're here, I always like showing people on Wikipedia. Wikipedia has a whole lot of different languages that you can choose from, but one that most people don't know about is Simple English. So I'll show you two ways to turn this on. On the left-hand column, if I click on 32 more, I scroll through, you're going to find one called Simple English. And it's probably going to be easier if I just search for it. So I'm going to type in simple. This page is not, oh, okay. Well, let me show you the other way I do it. So instead of, see up at the top where it says EN, if I erase EN and type in simple and hit enter, now I have Wikipedia's Simple English version of this. They try to write it about a grade 6 reading level. So I'll quickly scroll through. This is what the Simple English one looks like. And then if I go back to the full page, it's quite a bit longer. You can see how big or how small my scroll button is over here. So it's a very large page. So Simple English is actually a really handy tool to turn on if you're doing some basic research as a class. And then once you're in Simple English, all of your searches will continue that way. Okay, so I'm going to turn on my Read and Write toolbar again by clicking on my puzzle piece up in my extensions list, and it's going to pop up my toolbar here. So what I want to do now is I'm going to imagine I'm doing some research on the greatest hockey team of all time, and obviously Wikipedia is not going to be your go-to for that, but for this example, that's what we're going to use. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start highlighting some sentences that I think are going to be important for my research. And I might change the colors depending on the section that I want to be in my paper. Maybe I want it to be part of my, let's say yellow is going to be my introduction, green and blue are going to be my body paragraphs, and then I'm going to use this pink to do for my conclusion. So I've highlighted, I've gone through, done all my research that I want to do. Now what do I do with these highlights? If I click on this button where it's called Collect Highlights, go figure, but it's these colored arrows in a circle. By clicking on these, Read and Write gives me the option, do I want to collect all my colors or there's only a couple of them that I want to use? And I'm going to click OK. What this is going to do is it's now going to create a new document in my Google Drive that collected all of my highlights, and it's also going to add a link to the web page that I found those, and then it's going to give me the email address I was logged in using. So it's doing some citation for you, so the students don't have to try to scramble to remember what the link was. It actually gives them the full web address, and it organizes all of their highlights together. So if I had multiple yellows all over the page, it would sort them all together. So I find this to be a really good tool, especially for secondary students to start using when they're doing more and more research. So again, if you want to get rid of those highlights, just click them all over with your cursor, click on this the brush, and it clears them away. The next button you can use for highlighting is the vocabulary list. So what I'll do this time is I'm going to click and just highlight individual words. So they can be the same color, different colors. It doesn't really matter for this. And let's see, I'm going to pick a couple more. And maple. Okay, so now that I have these words collected or highlighted, I'm going to click on this button, which is my vocabulary list. So similar to the collect highlights, this is going to create a new Google Doc for me, but it's going to create a vocabulary list using the dictionary definitions built in. So as we'll see, it has 3 columns. It's going to have, 4 columns. It's going to have the word that I highlighted, the definition of it. It's going to give me a visual representation of it, and then it's going to give me a section that I can write in notes. So what I've used this for in the past is giving students, let's say they're doing a new science unit and there's a new vocabulary. I'll get them to go to a website and then find the words that we're using, highlight them, and then use this vocabulary list. So then they'll come back and they'll have, I'm going to shrink this down, there we go. Then they're going to have their own vocabulary list from this to start this unit. And then in the notes column, what I have them do is rewrite the definition in their own words or use it in a sentence to make sense for this. 2 downsides now I'll tell you with both the highlight collections and the vocabulary list If I wanted to go back to this page and find a few more words, if I click on my vocabulary again, it's going to make a new document. It's a small nuisance, but it is a bit of a nuisance. So then you would have to copy and paste your vocabulary list from the new page and then copy it over to your other one. I'm doing a very bad job of that. So you would copy these. I'll do Control C or right click and do copy, and then go into my other document and paste them in there. So yeah, but I find that to be a really, really good activity to get students to do when you're introducing some new vocabulary. The last button I use on external web pages would be this guy. So this is Simplified Page. What this does is it tries to strip away any images, any ads, and just leave you with the text that's available for you. And what this also lets you do is it lets you simplify more and more. So it'll take away, it doesn't do a great job, to be honest, of like changing verbiage or anything. All it's doing is stripping away any visual distractions, which could be very handy depending on your students. And you can see it's popped it into a new website. So if I X out of this tab, I still have my Wikipedia page here. And then you can still use your other buttons on here. So I could use the read back function. If I highlight a paragraph and click play.
The Maple Leafs have retired the use of 13 numbers in.
All right, so I could go ahead and then I can hit pause and stop. The other new button you see here is hover speech. So if I turn this on and I just hover my mouse over a sentence,
The Maple Leafs have retired the use of 13 numbers in honor of.
Really good, but it can get away from you sometimes, so I prefer to leave that off and just highlight the sections that I want to have read to me. Okay, and then lastly, the last two we have, one is a voice note. Really all you're doing is creating a comment on this page, but creating it as a voice note. So if I click on, let's say I highlight this sentence and click on this voice note, it's going to let me record 1 minute of a notation about this. Elephants at the zoo eat way more food than I thought they did. So now, if I hit insert, it's going to insert that note right into my sheet so I can go back to it. Not a lot of uses for this, to be honest. I haven't seen a lot of students finding this handy, but it's there if you would like. Elephants at the zoo eat... There we go. Listen to my lovely baritone. So I'm going to close that, or resolve it because it's in my way. And then lastly is a feature that they've actually turned into a whole full-fledged app, which I'm going to show you in another video. And that app is called Fluency Tutor. But it started as this button, which is Reading Practice Aloud. So what this is for is you can provide students with text and have them read and record their voice, which they would then send to you. So it kind of works as a running record or DRA testing, but you can do it remotely. So for example, let's say I highlight this first paragraph. I'm going to click on this practice reading aloud. It's going to open up a new page. It's going to ask me to use my microphone, and I'll say yes. And so now it's taken the text that I highlighted, and then it gives me this little toolbar on the side. So what I can do is I can click start recording, and I could read this text. I could have it read or played back for me, and then when I'm finished, I can hit send, and it's going to send it directly to my teacher if I have one set up on Google Classroom. So for example, let's hit recording. Adult African elephants are huge. Males can weigh as much as a school bus. And then I'll hit stop. And then when I hit send to teacher, if I don't have a teacher automatically set up, it's going to give me a list of them. Now, what this is doing, it's popping up another request to sign in. And if I had Google Classroom set up on this account, it would do that for me here. But if not, I can choose another teacher and I can just type in their email address. So that is the reading aloud practice. And like I said, they've created a whole other app for that called Fluency Tutor that we'll look at in another video. So that's the extent of the Read and Write toolbar on its own, but you can do a lot with it. So like I said, I'm going to share this practice document that I've created that essentially has students work through each of those tools, and then it will also get them using this feature and show them how handy it can really be. And then it gets them to use the dictation feature and then using a mind map. We're going to look at Google Drawings in another video as well. But if you're interested, if you follow these instructions here, I have people create a mind map by going to Insert, Drawing, and then New. And then they can create a mind map by dropping in shapes and then connecting them together with lines. So I could have multiple shapes. Let's say I do a circle on this one or a rounded rectangle. And then you click on this line, and now I can connect nodes from one to the other. So kind of like Inspiration or any of those Smart Ideas, those kind of apps. Yeah, so that is Read and Write, especially using it in a web page and on Google Docs. If you want to check the next video, it's going to be about using Read and Write for PDF files, which is going to be a fairly large amount of its use, to be honest. That was my computer telling me my computer has no viruses, so that's good to know. All right, so as always, if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. But today we did look at Read and Write for Chrome's installation, looked at the dictation, the text-to-speech feature, took a look at how those study tools work, and then I'll share that training activity link on in the description of this video, so check out for that. As always, feel free to send me any questions or suggestions for these videos. It's sam@samgoving.com, and thank you very much for watching. Cheers!